Let me introduce Professor Hugh Montgomery, Professor of Intensive Care Medicine at the UCL. He chaired the last two Lancet Commissions on Human Health and Climate Change and co-chairs 35-country, 52-institute Lancet Countdown, and has written and published extensively on this topic. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to offer a correction because that statement isn't true that we put into the countdown. 3 months later, there is no hope in hell of meeting the Paris deal. It's over. But I am going to tell you why. I'm going to give you some evidence, and I'm going to ask you for a bit of a call to action. So this is a session on carbon literacy. This is going to be very quick. That's how long it took to store the carbon in the fossil fuels that we're currently burning. It took approaching 350 million years, and we're burning it. We burned so much of it in the last 50 alone. This is what we burned last year. These were data came out from IEA last week. And that's going up steeply. Energy use is continuing to rise. No new energy source has ever displaced a previous one. When you hear that we're investing so heavily in renewables, it's great, but it's making no difference at all to the escalating use of fossil fuels. We're just adding to the mix. That's got to change. If we start looking at how much we're producing, if you start including land use for rice production, chopping down rainforest to graze cows and so forth, that's how much CO2 we're producing every year, over 50.6. In fact, it's probably approaching near 60 billion metric tons a year. 1 ton is 1,000 kilograms. A kilogram at standard temperature and pressure is 520 litres. That's a ton of CO2 in terms of its volume. And that's the volume of air around our atmosphere that we're putting it into. We're putting huge amounts of gas into a very small volume of atmosphere. And it lasts a hell of a long time once it's in there. And the problem is that's putting the concentration up. That's the rise in CO2 concentration against baseline. It's going up steadily and inexorably. And in fact, it's accelerating. What that does is it lets shortwave radiation through and it traps longwave radiation. Forget about global mean surface temperature rises. Think about energy gain. How much energy are we gaining now as a result of these greenhouse gases? In terms of Hiroshima bombs, we're gaining around 8.7 a second. Every single second that isn't going anywhere. And the problem is, unless we address this quickly, things will continue for a very long time. Because 1/5 of the greenhouse gases we emit today will be cooking our planet in 33,000 years' time, and 7% will be cooking the planet in 100,000 years' time. That's the problem that you're facing. If you add energy to the atmosphere, you get more weather, you get more extreme weather. That's why we're getting more and more extreme weather events that are more and more severe. If you stop emitting today, things are going to continue to get worse, according to the last IPCC report, for thousands of years. The rise is getting ever steeper. That's not going to change, even if we stop emitting today, but we can slow it. It's causing vanishing ice sheets. It's causing seas to rise as we melt land ice into oceans and they thermally expand. And that rate of rise is going up. We're now getting a rise of 1 centimetre every 2 years. Remember, that's not going to stay the same. That is going to really change dramatically as we move forward. Earth's surface temperature is rising, mean average temperatures. But just think how much energy it's taken to cook the entire land surface area and sea surface area of our whole planet by 1.5 degrees. Especially when 92% of the energy is stored in the water. And of course, it's not about average temperatures. We are seeing colossal rises in regional temperatures. Temperatures in the Baltic last year were 12 Celsius above normal. In the Antarctic last March, they were 49 Celsius above normal. 49 Celsius and 41 Celsius above normal in the Arctic, causing really rapid rate. So 1.1 degrees of temperature rise, 1.13, is catastrophically dangerous. It threatens your life and it will kill your children. My son's 18. Unless we take radical action right now. And the problem is it's much worse than that because we've triggered 10 positive feedback loops for emissions. As we melt land surface ice and sea ice, we reflect less heat back into the atmosphere. That's a surface albedo effect. The loss of ice, the exposure of dark land and soil and ocean means we've doubled the rate of energy gain in our planet in the last 14 years alone. We're setting light to the world. It's getting hotter and drier. That releases a lot of insulating gas. The temperature over Australia 2 years ago rose by 3 Celsius because of the blanket insulation of smoke. Soot in the lower troposphere absorbs heat, raising the temperature over Australia in those fires by 0.7 Celsius. And it's punching a hole in the ozone layers. In addition, we're releasing carbon dioxide, which itself is a greenhouse gas, which traps even more heat, which creates even more fires. The Canadian fires of just last summer added 6% to global greenhouse gas emissions. And there were fires everywhere, as you well know, around the globe last year. On top of that, carbon monoxide from those fires mops up hydroxyl radicals, which would normally clear methane. Methane is 83 times as powerful a greenhouse gas in its first 20 years as is CO2. And we're releasing methane too from carbonate rock stores in Siberia, from frozen methane hydrates in tundras, and from fermenting wetlands. The net result is that methane emissions from natural gas, because natural gas is a great invention by the fossil fuel industry because it sounds good. That's why they use the phrase. Natural gas is methane. We got that rise and the planet managed to buffer it, but we've now triggered positive feedback loops. That's now what's happening to global methane levels, and you'll see the rate of rise is going up ever more steeply. Furthermore, we're deforesting the Amazon. That's now got so dry it's burning itself down. 16 soccer pitches is lost to fire every minute. And the major rainforests of the world are now net emitters of CO2. And by getting these massive storms, we're injecting water vapor high into the atmosphere, 19 kilometers up, acting as a greenhouse gas. The net result of this is we've now triggered rapidly accelerating positive feedback loops. Each of those wiggly lines, going from January to December, is a year. Each year is moving up, getting hotter and hotter. The red line is this year. It's way, way out of kilter from anything we've ever seen before. The same applies to daily ocean surface temperatures. Same wiggly grey lines moving up to the last 3 years, and then the black line is this year. It's suddenly lost control. Highest temperatures we know in those oceans for 100,000 years, and we've managed to deliver that in 12 years. Antarctic sea ice. Same graphs moving downwards, and that's the anomaly this year as the sea ice collapses. And it's worse than that too, because weather systems change in binary state changes. This was March last year. On the 21st, temperatures were 40 Celsius above normal. That should say 47 the next day. We know that in the Arctic, average temperatures last summer were 32.5 Celsius. They would normally be 13. This isn't going to slow down. This is going to massively accelerate, and it will cause colossal sea ice melt at a rate that's unprecedented, and the sea level rise will not be, I promise you, 1 centimetre every 2 years. In addition, the Atlantic Meridional Overturn Circulation, that's our Gulf Stream, the Southern Meridional Overturn Circulation, and the Antarctic Underturning Circulations, these are the ones that transport ocean energy, are going to collapse. We know that they're going to collapse very soon indeed. AMOC, SMOC, we hit the 95% confidence intervals them collapsing in 13 months from now. And that's the end of civilization as you know it. The jet stream is moving north. That's going to deprive the whole of the Iberian Peninsula of water. So Portugal, Spain, southern Italy, France will be uninhabitable very soon. All of that moisture will dump on us, and it will dump on us as snow when the AMOC switches off. And we've got these other events, these are known as Dansgaard-Oeschger events, very sudden rapid acceleration in polar warming, which I've shown you is already happening. This paper in Nature suggesting that we're on that right-hand corner there, and that we're looking at rises of potentially 35 to 40 Celsius, very, very quickly indeed, we're talking over decades, in polar temperatures, triggering massive ice melt. And one of the Lancet Countdown has commented and focused really, as the UK report on health was, on things like dengue and Zika and all these other things. They're irrelevant. They're irrelevant because what's going to kill you and your children will be massive economic collapse and mass migration, to quote Jack Straw and William Hague from their times in the Foreign Office, mass migration at biblical scale, with deploying of nuclear weapons to protect ourselves, and that's what's coming. The economic hits we know will be huge. The WMO report in May of this year was saying we've got economic losses of 4.3 trillion to the world economy already and rising. The Institute and Faculty of Actuaries and Insurers in September said we have left it too late to tackle climate change incrementally. It now requires transformative change. And our economy may not exist at all if we don't do that. There will be no economy, let alone a health system. Lloyd's of London, that extreme left-wing organisation, clearly don't know what they're talking about, are talking about plausible economic losses of 5 trillion in the coming few years. But when they look at the risks of a single weather event in a single country just to food, we have a 1 in 300 chance within the next 5 years, so that could be next week, of a $17.6 trillion hit to the global economy, from which you will not recover. We're losing $4,500 a second already due to extreme weather events directly related to climate change. And the COP processes have done nothing. These are atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations. Those are the last 27 COP negotiations, and you could just add yesterday's, because it has achieved nothing at all, and neither will it, because the concentrations are going up ever more steeply. Their own scientific advisors, the IPCC, AR6 Working Group 2, said that unless we act immediately, we will not have a livable future. That's one in which you will be alive or your children will be alive. And yet the COP process has done nothing to address what their own scientists tell them to be true. That should scare the living daylights out of you. But the positive thing is that the initiative that's being led here today is the start, and we can make the difference. You have no time left to act, but we can do it if we're very quick. Because it isn't about the 5.2% of greenhouse gas emissions for which we're responsible. It's about the 11.7% of GDP which goes to healthcare. And if you add in things like Durex and Dettol and Elastoplast and toothpaste and call those things healthcare products, which I think they are, you're approaching a fifth of the global economy. If we move that constrained ecosystem, we can change things very quickly because of leverages on pension funds and hedge funds. We were talking earlier on, your bank account, if you open it and it has £0 in it and you keep it at 0, to a bank is worth 1.5 million on their ledger sheet, because that's what they're able to borrow against it. If we start moving our money quickly, we can change things very fast. Finally, there is no such thing as a net zero. It's a con. It was also invented by the fossil fuel industry to get you convinced that you don't have to get rid of fossil fuels. This paper came out in January of last year showing that 90% of offsetting in rainforests alone did nothing. And we know from this TSV report that 90% of offsets don't work at all. And the reason's very clear. Of carbon capture and storage drawing down CO2 last year, we drew down 0.00001% of our emissions because there is no way of doing it. It hasn't been invented yet. So net zero is magic pixie dust. You've got to move your money and you've got to get rid of emissions right now. You've got to get rid of scope 1, which is the emissions from what you burn, petrol in your car, gas in your boiler. You've got to get rid of scope 2, that's the emissions for which you're responsible about power purchase. And you've got to get rid of scope 3, which is what this initiative today is doing by dealing with procurement and services. We've all got to take our actions. There's an election coming up. Write to all your parliamentary candidates and explain that this is the one issue on which you will be voting, because the Conservatives think that it's a vote winner to fight against climate change. They need to know that is not the case. We need to move to electric vehicles where we can. You need to move to heat pumps at your homes if you can, in hospitals. We need to reduce our scope 2 emissions to the very best abilities. We should all be doing these things. And we need to deal with the bits we can regulate. Banking is one. We can talk later if you want to ask which banks to move to, but you can all do that today. If you're at the high street bank, you are funding your own death and that of your children. And you have to stop doing it, and you can do it now. Finally, we can act professionally. I'm not going to name and shame which of our professional organisations are not taking action, but you could say it's the majority of them. Stop giving them your subsidy or your subs. unless they move their counts and start acting. You can work with your university who are doing great stuff, and you can deal with procurement. So in summary, I'm going to stop there. We are in desperate trouble. We are completely out of time to act. We have to do it now. The positive bit is that if we all do it together, and there are 1.41 million NHS workers, that alone could tilt the market so successfully that the cascade starts moving and we're in with a chance. But it has to start today. Thank you for listening.
Mic on? Oh. Just one question. So we do want to, as you have enlightened us on, many different aspects, which I must admit I never knew about the banking aspect of this. So we are trying to push out carbon literacy. Will you help us in spreading the word, UK and the world?
Well, absolutely. We all need to do this, right? I mean, advertisers tell us that each one of us has 7 people who either love us so much or respect us so much, they'll do pretty much anything that we ask them to do. Children are really good at this, and some of us in this room have parents that are still alive. I don't, but some of you do. They respond very well. So each one of you, if you think what happened to us with COVID with an R of 3.7, if you have an R of 7, we could change things dramatically today. If every single one of you made these changes right now, and each one of you leveraged that other 7, the world would already start changing this afternoon. So yes, we just need to get these messages out, but they're not there. They're available if you know where to look, but they're not synthesized.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.